We are here with Bryce today. We are doing only multicolored cards. The last time you were on the show, you did only colorless cards, so you're not going to get any monocolored cards at any point in time, it feels like. You did Void Winnower. It was a really good video last time. If you're interested in watching that one and how Bryce talked about those cards and analyzed them, check out that video right there. I'll show it up on the screen. Today, we are only doing multicolored cards. And how much Magic experience do you have outside of literally the last video we did?
The last video we did, I just played casually in Commander. I will probably drop a lot of money when the Final Fantasy set comes out.
It makes sense. Okay, sounds good. These cards are not going to be good or bad in relation to Commander. We don't do Commander on this show because almost any card can be good in Commander. So there's really no way to say. But in 60 card formats, you're going to tell me whether these 5 cards are good or bad, and there's no in between. So let's go ahead and get started with the first card.
That is some art.
That is some art.
Slogurk the Overslime. 1 neutral, 1 green, 1 blue, legendary creature ooze. Legendary means you can only have 1 of this on the field, but you can have as many in your deck unless it's like banned or something.
Correct.
Okay. Trample, it means it does Yu-Gi-Oh damage.
Yu-Gi-Oh damage.
Whenever a land card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on Slogurk the Overslime. Remove 3 +1/+1 counters from Slogurk. Return it to its owner's hand. When Slogurk leaves the battlefield, return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand. Ooh, this one's weird.
Yeah, today I'm going to tell you, today you're going to get some weird cards.
Oh, I want to be challenged for sure. So when lands go to the graveyard, that's generally like you don't really destroy lands in like most competitive formats unless they're really toxic, right? Am I correct?
Yeah, no. Like land destruction is in 60 card formats in the form of destroying your opponent's land and then they get a land to replace it kind of thing.
I've seen like some other content where people did like really old cards and it was common, and I think they just went away from that, right? Because people don't like it.
Right. Wasteland is a card that's played in old formats like Legacy, and like there's cards that literally just destroy lands. Those aren't as popular. Wasteland being the most popular one in Legacy, but Legacy isn't as big of a format right now. So, and it's a huge barrier to entry. To play Legacy, it's very, very expensive, like money-wise, to play Legacy, so not as many people play it.
Alright, so the only way you're getting lands in the graveyard is you're like milling them or discarding them. It could be like either player, and then this gets +1 counters. It's relatively like cheap-ish, like 3/3 for 3. You can make it bigger by fulfilling its cost, and then remind me, in Magic, like, almost everything is, like, instant speed unless it says otherwise.
Correct.
So, like, if this thing is getting targeted, you could, like, return it to your hand.
If it has 3 or more 1/1 counters on it, yeah.
If it has 3 or more counters. From what I'm saying, like, I feel like, I don't remember if this is true or not, but I feel like green and blue are not the colors that, like, discard cards from hand easily.
Green and blue are not known to discard cards, no. That's more of a black thing.
Yeah, and I feel like the only way you like can really get a bunch of counters in the graveyard like quickly enough for this card to matter is by discarding cards or milling. I mean, I guess you could mill with some stuff. I think blue milled at one point.
Blue can mill, yes.
But is blue like mill both players or only like mill the opponent?
There are cards that do all 3. Just your opponent, both players, and just yourself. Okay. Or there's blue cards that say target player too. So you can target yourself or them.
I see how this could like snowball and then be really obnoxious, and then you kind of just get more lands, and you have to be maybe if you like also play some black in this deck.
I do have to give you a little bit of a caveat, and it might be something that I just didn't have a chance to go over with you in the last video. Fetch lands exist, and those are a land that says put it in the graveyard to get a land from your deck into play.
So it's like the ones that are like you destroy them and then you search.
You send it to you play the land for your land for turn, and you can just send it to the graveyard by paying a life, and then you get a new land from your deck into play. So that would be considered putting a land into your graveyard, like from the battlefield.
Okay, that is pretty relevant. I don't know. I'm still seems just kind of iffy. Like I can see how this can get really big, but I feel like unless you can just draw and discard a ton of cards, it's just kind of a big dude
Yeah.
that doesn't do much.
Okay, so let me tell you one other thing. There's a group of cards that are pretty popular in general. They're called channel lands. Like there's lands with different abilities that can put the lands in the graveyard. There's one for each color of mana. There's one that you can discard from your hand to destroy an artifact or enchantment called Besiju. There's one that you can discard to mill 3 cards and return a creature back from your graveyard to your hand. That's the black one, Kakanuma. There's Odawara, which you can discard to return a creature, artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker from the board to the hand. They all cost a lot of mana to use, though. It's like 3 and a blue to do, like 4 mana total. Discard this land, return a thing. The green one is pay 2 mana, discard it, kill something. The black one is pay 4 mana, mill 3, add 1 back. The white one is pay 3 mana, discard it, and deal 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. That one is Aganjo. And then there's Sokenzam, which is another 4 mana cost one. Discard it, make 2 1/1 spirits with haste.
So it's like those lands have like the kind of like spell utility, where instead of being a land, you can also just do this like not like this off rate ability kind of.
Exactly. Like it's kind of off rate, but it doesn't actually count as a spell. So like it can't be countered by counter spells.
Okay.
They can be countered by like counter target ability kind of stuff, but they're also like pretty expensive for what they're doing. Or you could just play them as a land. So it's like it's kind of low opportunity cost, and that's something that you might consider playing in a deck with Slowgurk in it. So let me look.
Okay.
So with fetch lands and those combined, I kind of needed to tell you that those exist in order for you to like evaluate Slowgurk. It's just up to you to say like, oh, do I actually want to be doing this in this deck, or whether it's good or bad.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you want to do at least the fetch land stuff in like most decks, just because thinning your deck is good in games.
Fetch lands are in every single deck. Yeah.
But I also think that the more I doubt myself, the more you're like, oh, you need this additional context and this additional. So I think you're just trying to bait me a little bit. I think I'm gonna stick with my gut and say this is like not great.
Final answer.
Final answer.
Okay, this card is good, and it's for the reason I mentioned. Yep. How big does
this really even get?
I did the reverse bait, by the way. Where I tell you and make you think I'm baiting, but then like that's the actual reason it's good. Okay.
Oh, I get you.
Yeah, this is pretty good in Modern, which is a pretty powerful format, and also really good in Standard. One of the best decks in the format actually has Slowgurk in the deck, and it's at 4 copies. So you like play a bunch of Slowgurks in it, because what you can do is it's a legendary focused, and the only thing I didn't tell you about the channel lands is they get cheaper mana cost based on how many legendary creatures you have in play. So if they usually have like 2 or 3 or 4 legendaries in play, which makes all of these channel lands 1 mana, and then you can go 1 mana channel, put a counter on Slowgurk, 1 mana channel this land, put a counter on Slowgurk, put a counter on Slowgurk again, and then you can return it back to the hand and get all the channel lands back to your hand because they're in your graveyard now, and then you can just keep reusing the channel lands over and over and over again, so your opponent loses the game.
I'd have to see it in action. I just don't see it. It just seems like a big beat stick that like removes itself from the board, so it's just not clicking in my head.
Like you don't have to remove it from the board, which is the crazy part. So like you can keep dirtling and interacting with your opponent with these lands throughout the course of the game, and maybe like dealing in some chip damage. And then when you have Slowgurk on the board and it no longer has summoning sickness, your opponent like can't really get rid of the Slowgurk because like you can just channel the lands in response and then add Slowgurk back to the hand, like you were mentioning earlier. But also if your opponent doesn't deal with it, because like why would they want to try to deal with it anyway? You go to attacks, and then you attack them, and then they say they're at like 9 life or whatever. And then this is a 3/3. Maybe it has a couple counters on it already. Do you block it, or do you like let it hit you? But if you let it hit you, then like you can discard a bunch of lands and just kill them out of nowhere because it keeps getting counters, and you don't have to bounce it. You can just let this be like a 12/12 and hit them. And they can't really block it. It has trample, so it's like it's like a really, really annoying card and annoying deck. There's also a card in this deck called Rona, which says tap it, draw, discard, which can discard the lands to fuel this. But also it says whenever you cast a legendary spell, untap Rona. So like you keep doing this draw, discard thing, and you discard a bunch of lands for this too. There's also another card in the deck that's a red card called Inti. It says whenever you discard a card, exile the top card of your deck, and you can play it till the end of the next, till your next end step. So, like, whenever you discard the channel lands, it would trigger Inti and Slogurk. Slogurk gets a counter, Inti gets to exile a card, and it's like infinite card advantage for the most part. And you eventually just kill them with a huge Slogurk. So that's why it's good.
How many colors does that deck play?
5. It's like 4 or 5.
Oh, it plays all 5?
Okay. 4 or 5. Usually, sometimes it doesn't play white, but like they have an artifact in the deck that lets you tap for white. So if you wanted to play a Ganjo, which is the one that the channel land that deals 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, they can play that. But usually they play 4 colors and non-white.
Man, I guess I just undervalued the ability for just the dodge stuff. Cause I'm like, how hard? I was like, oh, it's probably hard to get 3 counters, so it's like it can't use the dodge that often. But if it's just happening all the time, then
yeah. Unfortunately, playing against this deck is really annoying because it's really easy for them to get 3. Like I said, Takenuma is the black one that 4 mana channel mill 3 and add a creature back to your hand. So even if you kill this, like they'll mill 3. If it's Slogurk's in play, it will trigger. If you mill lands, it will put counters on Slogurk. And then you can add another Slogurk back from your graveyard to your hand, so you can keep like looping the Slogurk. So it's just really annoying.
You know, you said every card's gonna be good or bad. This was pretty medium in my head, so I should have just went up.
You should have rounded up. Yeah, this card is good. Let's go ahead and go on the second card. It's so good, in fact, that there's a whole deck built around it. So, take that as you will. Okay, here's the next card.
Time Wipe. It's 5 mana total, 2 neutral, 2 white, 1 blue. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand, then destroy all creatures sorcery speed. Big board wipe at the cost of 1 dude. That comes to my hand.
Oh, by the way, you don't have to have a creature to play this.
Do not have a creature. So it's like, I can do this, but I always do this.
Yeah.
Oh, how good is a 5 mana board wipe in Magic right now? Board wipes are just good in every game, but it's like how costed is it based on how fast the game is at the moment. Return a creature is like cute because it also lets you let a creature dodge it and then gets it's like, what is it called in Magic? I'm thinking Battle Cry from Hearthstone.
Enter the battlefield trigger, usually in Magic shortened to ETB.
ETB. So you get the ETB again because when it dodges the board wipe. The card we just looked at could dodge board wipes, but like board wipes are still good. How good's 5 mana board wipe? Blue and white, those are like the premier like control colors, right?
Correct.
I think if those are the premier control colors, I think this card has to be good because they can stall long enough to play 5 mana wipe the board. It is a sorcery, so it's like slower speed, but I think board wipes are just probably good. I'm gonna say this card is good. Less analysis last card. Board wipe good.
Okay.
And 5 is just enough.
Okay, so Magic has so many board wipes. In Standard, I can count probably like 8 board wipes off the top of my head that are all different types of board wipes. So board wipes are super common, and the only ones that get played are the ones that are the most efficient or do the most broken thing. Okay. The most efficient board wipe in Standard is 4 mana, and returning a creature to the owner's hand isn't worth the upside to be able to board wipe 1 turn earlier versus a deck like Mono Red that is trying to kill you as fast as possible. Sometimes 5 mana you're just already dead. That being said, there's also a 5 mana one in that is played in Standard. And it's also played in Pioneer, called Sunfall, and that is 5 mana, 3 and 2 white. Exile all creatures. Make a 0/0 artifact token that has +1/+1 counters equal to the number of creatures you exiled, and then you can pay 2 mana to make that into a creature later on in the game. That card is the best 5 mana sweeper ever printed. There's also another sweeper that is in Pioneer currently, and is even played in Modern. And that one is 4 mana, and it's also white, blue, and 1 mana instead of white, blue 2, like this. And it says destroy all creatures, and this spell can't be countered. So now if you play against a tempo deck that is trying to like get on the board early and then counter your sweeper, it can't be countered. So unfortunately, the upside is really good, by the way. If you can return a creature to the hand, there's a deck that used to play this card a long time ago called Niv-Mizzet Reborn. You would play Niv-Mizzet Reborn, it looks at the top 10 cards. I'll put Niv-Mizzet Reborn over here. ATB, look at the top 10 cards, and get one of each color pair to your hand. So you get one blue-white card, one green-red card, one green-black card, like all the different colors of mana. As long as it has 2 colors, you get to add it to your hand. So you'd add Time Wipe to your hand, and then next turn you wipe the board, and then add Niv-Mizzet Reborn back to your hand, and then you can get the ETB again, which is what you're thinking, which is why this card saw play a long time ago. But it still wasn't even one of the best board wipes in that format to begin with. You just played it in that deck because it returned your Niv-Mizzet Reborn to your hand. But overall, this card is not good. Returning the creature to your hand is not worth the 1 additional mana.
Better board wipes, better stuff at the cost. It's hard. I don't know the relative board wipes, but I just like 5 seems like right where it should be good, but I guess I'm just a little off.
You're just 1 mana over. Usually, if it's a 5 mana board wipe, or even 6 mana for that matter, like a card like Farewell, and I'll put over here that can exile anything besides Planeswalkers, can exile creatures, artifacts, enchantments, and graveyards. And that's a 6 mana sweeper, and it exiles, and it does even graveyards, and that one's playable, and that one's good. But unfortunately, Time Wipe is like that weird medium where it's like it's in the format, but like no one will play it because there's like other better ones.
This is not quite good enough.
Exactly.
It's like it's too middle of like I'm not better than this, but I'm also not better than this.
Exactly. There's no way of you knowing that, but
yeah, oh, absolutely. I have no idea what the format looks like. I was just like 5 mana seems like a reasonable board wipe to me. But
right. I mean, and there's we're
cheaper right now.
Yeah, I mean, even now there's 3 mana board wipes. Like in Alchemy, there's a card called Divine Purge, and Alchemy isn't very much of a popular format, but there's a card called Divine Purge in the format that is 3 mana, exile everything, and your opponent exile like all creatures and artifacts, and they cost 2 more. Your opponent can still cast them from exile, but they cost 2 more per card. There's also a card in Modern that they just printed into Modern, Toxic Deluge, which you probably know about being a Commander player. That is a 2 and a black, pay X life. Give all creatures -X till end of turn. And that's 3 mana.
I don't play enough Commander to know what the new Commander cards are.
Okay, yeah.
I play very casually.
Okay.
I have like my starter deck that I play with my friends who play way more than me.
Okay. There's 3 mana ones, like I said, like Toxic Deluge, Brotherhood's End, and which can deal 3 damage to all creatures. Or you can also choose to have it destroy artifacts with mana value 3 or less on the board. There's also one called Anger of the Gods, which deals 3 damage to all creatures and exiles them. So, I mean, since there's even 3 mana ones, like 5 mana is really hard to justify. Anyway, let's go ahead and go on to the third card.
Oh, this card has really sick art.
I love this art, yeah.
Ren and 6, Planeswalker, blue, red and green. So Planeswalkers are like kind of like extra players that someone could attack, and then you can use one of these abilities at like sorcery speed once per turn.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So +1, the gain life one, return up to 1 target land card from your graveyard to your hand. Deals 1 damage to any target. You ping something. And then -7, you get an emblem with instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard have what's Retrace?
Retrace is discard a land, you can cast it from your graveyard.
For that cost or for free?
The cost.
If I remember anything about Planeswalkers, is that their big ability almost never happens. So I gotta evaluate based on the other abilities.
It's more of the minus ability rarely ever happens, but what's important is the importance of how good the big ability is how threatening it actually is. Like, can you just leave it on the board forever and it matter, or can you leave it on the board and it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter as much.
It makes, like,
it does. Like, so it's almost never going to go off. But how threatening is it?
Like, if this goes off, do I instantly lose the game?
Exactly.
So I do actually have to deal with it eventually,
Correct.
even if it's like the incremental value is small.
Correct.
So you could like ping little guys to any target, so you can just do like 1 little damage to the hero every turn, or to the player every turn if you want, or you can kill like small little weenie blockers with 1 damage. There's returning a target land doesn't seem like that crazy. It seems so okay, but I guess it's only 2 mana as a planeswalker, so it's like really cheap. Is there any way to like amplify the damage? Like,
not with good cards.
Not with good cards.
Usually the cards that would like say, oh, if you would deal damage, deal X amount more damage. There's like a card called Torbrand, which is 4 mana that is not playable. Not really.
Okay.
It was playable in Standard when it was in Standard, but that was more in an aggro deck, and you wouldn't really play Ren and 6 in a super aggressive deck.
So yeah, to me it seems it's like red and green, like kind of like rampy, and it helps, or not rampy, but you like help get like your lands like back. So I feel like you're using them for like other things. It helps, and it can help deal with like small, like little like aggressive things that are maybe like really high attack, really low health to help kind of keep you alive a little bit longer if you're trying to play like a green ramp type thing.
For context, the cards that are 1 toughness that are high power, they're basically 2/1s. 2 power, 1 toughness. Like, nothing that really has, like, 3 power, 1 toughness that's, like, a playable Magic card. Like, right now in 60-card formats.
That still seems... That does seem, like, decent if you're playing, like, ramp. But it doesn't, like, do much else. Like, it kind of... You just get your lands back and then kind of buy you time if you're trying to ramp, is kind of what I see for this card. And you just have the module of, like, do I want to do that or that? Would green red be like a color that ramps? I know green ramps. I don't know about red. Red just always seems like the burn color or the face color.
Usually green is the one that ramps, and red is the one that has like targeted damage removal, or like cards that you can exile the top cards of your X cards of your deck and you can play them till the end of your next turn. They have cards that like Wish that goes and fetches a card in your in your sideboard that you can cast. Like, red cards do like so many things, but
yeah,
usually they don't ramp, and they don't deal with lands outside of destroying your opponent's land.
They're like they're like aggressively flavored or like damage flavored.
Yeah.
What's like the standard 2-drop in terms of like power and toughness?
Standard 2-drop and in terms of power and toughness. Okay, let's give you an example. I would say the average 2-drop power and toughness wise is like a 3 power 2 toughness or 2 power 3 toughness.
Okay, so like kind of like Hearthstone 2-3-3-2.
That was a really tough thing to answer because like there's it can be all over the place. There's a really good card that's like a 0.
Like,
there's a really good card that's
like how easy is it for them to just slap down a guy and kill this?
You're never going to kill a 2-drop with this. Ever.
Yeah. No, not this killing a 2-drop, a 2-drop killing this.
Oh. I mean, 2-drop, like, this would go to 4 loyalty if the first thing you do is plus it. If the first thing you do is minus this, a 2-drop could definitely kill this. If the first thing you do is plus it, it's going to be a little bit harder for a 2-drop to kill this. Unless that 2-drop is a removal spell. Because you can play a card like Molten Collapse, and that's 2 mana, and that can just destroy target planeswalker. So that also exists.
Or Lightning Bolt that just does 3 damage.
Exactly. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of 1 mana cards that can kill this as well. There's Prismatic Ending, Leyline Binding, like exile target non-land permanent kind of card that will deal with this as well.
I feel like because it's cheap and because like it can help slow down the game against really aggressive stuff, I think this card's probably like I was thinking like just good enough, but it's also like I'm gonna say,
okay. So these cards are sorry, the cards I'm giving you today are not either or. It's either really good or really bad.
Really good or really bad. Doesn't seem like it does a lot. I'm gonna say it's bad. Yeah, I'm gonna be swayed back. I think it's not great enough.
Final answer.
Yeah, I will say final answer. Just not quite good enough.
Okay. This card, how do I explain this? This card is banned in Legacy.
Oh, close to saying it is good.
It is banned in one of the strongest formats in the whole game. It's also one of the best. It's also very, very good in Modern, but it's not banned. The existence. One thing I didn't hear you mention when you were going over this card is something that I already told you about in the video is fetch lands.
Oh, you can just grab your searchers back.
You play a fetch land, you fetch for whatever land you want, play Ren and 6, and then you immediately plus Ren and 6, add your fetch land back. And then next turn you can play the fetch land, use the fetch land for another land, and then plus Ren again, add your land, so you never ever miss a land drop. So in decks in like control type mid-range decks that rely on like getting to 4 mana or 5 mana, like a card like a deck like Indomitable Creativity, they will play this card because they need to hit their land drops, and also fetch lands are one of the most important parts of their deck because they can fetch for a specific land that lets them go off. But the combination of fetch lands with Ren and 6 makes Ren and 6 an actual broken card, and it is It is not medium. It is actually a broken Magic card.
Oh, it's interaction with fetch land specifically.
Correct. And interacting with Boseiju. Boseiju, who endures another card that I told you about when we were talking about Slowgurk. The green one that kills an artifact or enchantment, the channel land that you can pay 100 green and discard it. That adds that card back to your hand, so you can just keep discarding it over and over again, killing everything your opponent has. And it doesn't just kill artifacts and enchantments. Boseiju kills artifacts, enchantments, and non-basic lands. So you can kill your opponent's lands.
I'm doing so poorly today. Oof.
No, all good, all good. I wanted to give you Wrenn and 6 after I told you about how good Slowgurk is, so that you maybe can think about the fetch lands and the channel lands when evaluating Wrenn and 6, but it seems that you didn't even think of that, but it's okay.
I'm really bad at evaluating lands because it's like my least favorite Magic mechanic. It's like not even like in my brain. I'm like, I don't like having to draw lands. This mechanic sucks, so everything about it sucks.
See, the thing is, if you play Magic, it will turn your head around when it comes to lands, because lands could be actually broken. Like, lands could be insane. Like, especially with Wrenn and 6. Having cards like the channel lands and the fetch lands and everything, and lands that let you look at the top card and put it in the graveyard if you don't want it, keep it on top if you do want it. Those are called surveil lands. But anyway, if you actually play Magic, it will. And I get, it will turn your. I just
casually get upset when I draw too many lands or too little.
That also does happen still in Magic, but Wrenn and 6 definitely does help with you never having to draw.
Yeah.
Like you never mana screw because you always have a land if you have a fetch land with Wrenn and 6. Anyway, let's go ahead.
That makes absolute.
Yep.
Oh my god, I'm doing.
It's okay.
I was about to say it's good, but I was like, it's cheap, so it has to be good. I'm like, no.
It's okay.
That's too little of an effect.
It's okay. So far, you're 0-3, so I'm doing a very good job at picking these cards for you.
Oh man.
And once again, going to the fourth card, either this card is very good or very bad.
All right, Voldalian Desecrator, Vahar Voldalian Desecrator.
Vahar.
Say that 5 times fast.
Vahar Voldalian Desecrator.
That's once.
Okay. I'm not gonna try
again. Blue and a black, so it is cheap. Legendary creature, Phyrexian Merfolk Wizard, so it has like a lot of like trait tags if those ever matter.
Yep.
And legendary, I guess, is also like a trait tag because things work off legendaries.
Yep.
You only have one of this. Tap, draw a card, then discard a card. If you discarded an instant or sorcery card this way, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So it's like a bonus on top of drawing and discarding. 2 mana, sacrifice this dude. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If it would be put into graveyard, exile instead. Activate only as a sorcery, so you can't use that at instant speed. So instant speed spells in your graveyard are worse with this.
Although you still can cast instants in the graveyard with. But you just have to do it.
You can cast them, they're just not as good because you cast them as sorceries. Like
it's basically
a lot of instant value is the fact that they're instant.
Yes, like basically it means that you can't cast a counterspell with it. Basically.
Yeah. Okay. That would be busted. I'm like, my entire graveyard of counterspells I can toolbox instantly.
Exactly.
For 2.
Yep.
When it says cast it, you don't pay the cost, right?
You do pay the cost.
You pay 2 plus whatever it costs.
Correct. If it's said without paying its mana cost, it would actually I think break the whole game because you can cast humongous
absolutely.
instants and
That's
sorceries.
what I had to make sure.
Like if it's said without paying its mana cost, like there's so many
you
cards that are like
9 mana spell.
There's so many cards that are like 8 mana, like 10 mana, like they would just. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they would never print a card like that. It's just way too good.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
So tapping to draw a card, discard a card. Is that affected by Summoning Sickness?
It is. Tap abilities do. The second ability does not, since it doesn't tap.
It does not. Really good, really bad. Drawing a card, discard a card is good. I feel like sometimes it's a little harder to interact with Magic cards if you don't want them to be interacted with. Maybe that's something haven't been evaluating well enough. And then you could toolbox your entire graveyard in black, but it costs 2 more.
Black does have the like Thoughtseize, look at your opponent's hand, discard a card, like those kind of cards in black.
Oh no, I know that like hand rip cards are decent in Magic, but not as good as they are in like every other game. And like other games specifically.
Right. I mean, they're still very good. Like Thoughtseize is a very, very good card, but it's not like ban worthy. Like
They're
it would
good,
be
but
in
not
Yu-Gi-Oh.
like turbo broken like they are in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Right.
In my game, they're all like not good, but that's because they're all way too expensive.
Right.
Like if they made cheaper versions of those, they'd be good, but they're not.
They learned from the other games.
What? Yeah, they learned. They put on like boss monsters in my game for whatever reason. Like instead of doing like, a cool effect that affects the board, they hand rip, which makes them really weak.
There's a good card in standard right now that's like 4 mana, but like when it enters battlefield, your opponent discards a card, and whenever your opponent discards a card, you make a clue token, which you can pay 2 mana to draw a card. That card's pretty good.
Okay, so draw and discard is obviously a good effect, but only does it once per turn, and it can't do it the turn it comes out. Pinging them is okay. There's probably ways to untap, but I don't think that's like a brutal way. It's like just kind of slow chip, so it'd be helpful, but it's not like game breaking. Paying 2 extra to play any spell from your graveyard at sorcery speed seems solid, but it's like kind of slow. Unless it's just really good, like 0 mana cards. And then I'm playing or 0 or 2 1 mana cards.
What, like Thoughtseize?
Is that a 0 or 1
That's
mana
a 1 mana.
card?
That's a 1 mana black card, yeah. The one that looks at your opponent's hand and discards a card. So basically, you can look at this as like you can like dump a card to your graveyard to use with this, or like you can like reuse the card with this that you've already used.
Yeah.
And also the removal
I'm thinking
spells
more
are
about
also,
like I use a card and I use it again.
Yeah.
Is kind of where I'm looking at it. And then if I did have to discard a card later, like it could maybe come up if I need it like to like end of the game sort of thing.
Yeah.
But more so, I'm just playing the good card and then I'm playing the good card again.
Right.
So like, how good is it to play a card and then pay 2 mana to replay the card? But I also have to pay 2 mana for this thing, like, out. So that's like an additional 2 mana. I feel like you're paying a lot of mana to do a thing. And like, I guess you bank it later, but it seems like paying 4 extra mana to play any of your spells seems like a lot. To like replay anything. I'm gonna think the just playing this, which is kind of just a low ability creature that kind of cycles you, and then paying 2 again to play a spell that you still have to pay the cost for. Paying 4 mana on top of whatever you're doing it just seems like too much. So I'm gonna say it's bad, not great card.
Okay, so think about this card in the Slogurk deck. Like you can draw a card, discard a card. If you discard a land, you can put a counter on Slogurk. You can pay 2, sacrifice it, and pass your removal spell back again from your graveyard. And it's a legendary, so it works with the channel lands as well. So it would be like a card that you would think would be good in that deck, but there's a card called Rona that says whenever you cast a legendary, untaps it again, so you get to basically like do that over and over again in the deck. So this card doesn't make the cut, and this card is bad. So good job.
I mostly base it off of 4 mana total to replay something is just too much.
Yeah, this card is a combination of Rona, the one that taps and untaps, and Snapcaster Mage, which is a very good card. Snapcaster Mage is a card that's 1 and a blue with flash. You can play it at instant speed, obviously, because that's flash. When it enters the battlefield, you can target an instant or sorcery in your graveyard, and then you can play that card that turn. You do have to pay the mana for it again. So basically, like the 2 mana sacrifice Vohar, cast an instant or sorcery, graveyard this turn is a good ability. The problem with Vohar is that it says activate only as a sorcery. With Snapcaster Mage, a card that's actually good, you can cast even instant speed cards, including counter spells. So this card,
and that card also doesn't have an extra cost to play the card, does it?
It's just 1 and a blue to play the card, and when it enters the battlefield, it does the thing. Yeah.
The Snapcaster is like you play it for 1 and then it's 1 and a blue to play it, so it's the same ability, but it costs a blue.
It's 1 and a blue, so it's 2 mana to play it from your hand, but you don't have to pay any additional mana once it's on the battlefield. It just targets an instant or sorcery.
That's what I was thinking. Like, so the fact that this had to pay additional mana on top of paying for it was kind of what sold me, but also sorcery means you can't play your instants.
Yeah, it's like a combination of Rona and Snapcaster Mage, if both Rona and Snapcaster Mage were bad. So yes, Vohar is bad.
Yeah, so there's just other like multiple cards that are better than it in like the same slot.
Yeah, exactly. So it's trying to do like a combination of both of them, but it's a worse version of both of them. So pretty bad.
Yeah. I that's utility sometimes doesn't make up for value a lot of the times unless you're in like a really slow format.
So good analysis on this one. Yeah. Even then, like people have tried to play this card, it's just never good enough. Okay.
We got one on the board.
We're on the board. All right, you're 1 and 3. Let's see if you can go 2 and 3 here with this last card. And This is a fairly new card that came out, but it's a really interesting card. So I'm interested to see what you think of this card.
Also, I'm like kind of thinking about it. I'm like, I feel like I've heard the name Ren in 6 before, so I should have assumed it was good. I feel like I've heard this before, even though I've never seen this card.
Yeah,
I was like,
we had one competitive tournament outside of like regular like Friday Night Magics and locals tournaments.
Yeah. It's not just locals.
And this card either made the top 8 or it did not make the top 8 at all. Up to you.
Okay. Flage, Titan of the Fire's Fury. Once again, sick art.
Super sick, yeah.
One red, one white, one neutral. Elder Giant. When Flage enters the battle, sacrifice it unless it escaped. I'll see that later. Whenever Flage enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage to any target, and you gain 3 life. Ooh. Whenever escape, pay a lot of mana to exile, and exile 5 other cards from your graveyard to do that. So, no matter what, when it comes on the battlefield, it just does 3 damage and gains 3 life, and then you could pay the additional to make it a 6/6.
What escape?
It's kind of how I'm reading
escape is? It says you may cast this card from your graveyard for its escape cost. You cannot escape it.
Oh, from your graveyard.
Yeah, you can't escape it from your hand.
So when you escape it, you don't pay 3, you just pay 4.
Correct.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like
it's still
already
a steep cost.
better than I thought.
Yeah, it's pretty a steep cost still. Red, white isn't something that you always have like a lot of availability to do, but you can make it work. I just wanted to see how you evaluate this card.
And 5 other cards from your graveyard.
Correct.
That is a lot, but
so what are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are its Enter the Battlefield seems decent. It's like when you combine cards together, you get more benefit. Lightning Bolt is like a card's played always, but that's instant, so it's not like as crazy. So Lightning Bolt something and gain 3 life for 3, which is tiny bit overcost, but you're kind of combining the effects. If you discard this and then you get that effect plus a 6/6, seems really good. It just depends on like that's a steep cost. Is 5 other cards in your graveyard. That's like you have to have done a lot of stuff already by the time you do this.
Correct.
But it does buy you time by maybe either burning someone or removing a body and then healing you.
Yeah, if you pay the initial investment of 3 mana from your hand first, or you like find a way to discard it out of your hand, or send it from deck to graveyard in some way.
Yeah.
But like if you think about it as like you're not milling it or like putting your deck to the graveyard or discarding it, you do have to pay like 7 total. You're paying 7 total mana. Yeah.
Card. Yeah, it's slightly below average to do the first part once because you even though it sacrifices itself, you would still get the Enter the Battlefield, right?
Correct.
This card seems super cool.
Yeah, that's why I gave it to you. It's just a really cool card.
It's like a tiny bit expensive, but I feel like there has to be some cheater stuff that you could do with this card. Just like when it enters the battlefield, sacrifice unless it escaped, and then that's how you escape. Is there any way to not have to pay that cost of itself, where it doesn't have to sacrifice itself? Or do I have to fill that condition exactly every time?
There are ways to cast it out of your hand and it just not trigger any abilities and stay on the board, but you wouldn't get the deal 3, gain 3. There's a card called Dress Down that like you can go end step, cast Dress Down, and Dress Down's it's a 1 and a blue for an enchantment with flash, and it says like sacrifice it at the start of your next end step, at the start of the next end step, whether it's yours or your opponent's. So you cast it after your opponent's end step already happened, so it stays on the board for your turn, and then you go like land Flage. You don't get the 3 damage and 3 life, but you get to keep the Flage on the battlefield. That's a way to kind of cheat it out. There's also another way.
I was thinking about like, is there a way to be like, if something would be sacrifice this instead?
Yeah, that almost doesn't exist in Magic. I don't think a card says that in Magic.
Okay.
Also, there's also cards that you can play that like counters a triggered ability. there's a card called Consign to Memory that you can use to, if you have 4 mana, you can cast Flage for 3 out of your hand, and then you can deal 3 and gain 3, and then you can like counter the sacrifice trigger with Consign to Memory, and that's how you could like cheat Flage into play.
Yeah,
there's like a couple ways that you can do it.
It seems like a good reoccurring threat. The biggest issue I see is like, okay, it's a below rate on the 3 cost, but it's above rate at 4 cost. But exile like 5 other cards seems really hard. And this, if I remember, Magic isn't like Yu-Gi-Oh, where certain decks could like use their like banish pile to do other stuff. Like it's very rare in Magic to use your exile pile like excessively.
You can't really. It's very niche that you can use your exile pile.
Yeah, so it's like you're just losing those cards.
You are losing them forever for the most part.
5 is a lot of cards to kind of get rid of. I think just like I've been leaning towards good. I'm gonna say I think this card is good because it has there's just enough ways to recur it and like use it effectively to kind of repeat the enter to the battlefield and get a big dude, even though it is a hefty cost.
So it's either really bad or really good. So you're saying this card is really good?
I'm saying this card's really good.
You are correct. This card didn't just make the top 8. It made the finals.
Yeah, top 1 or 2.
Top 2. Yeah, they lost in the finals to a Merfolk deck. Actually, it lost in the finals to this channel's own Nikachu. He won the tournament. With
nice!
Merfolk.
I've seen his videos.
Yep. If you've seen his videos on my channel, congratulations to Nikachu for winning.
Rating Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Yeah.
He knows nothing about them.
Yes, and he actually won the tournament with Merfolk against a Jeskai Wizards deck playing Snapcaster Mage, which we just went over on the last card, and Flage.
How does that deck play out? Like, it seems like it's just a solid card, but like, I'm just curious how
this card is very good. If you cast it on turn 3, you can cast it on turn 3. They did do both of the things that I mentioned. They played Dress Down, so you can dress down on your opponent's turn, then go to your turn and cast Flage. You don't get the ETB trigger, but your opponent has to deal with a 6/6 that's going to kill one of their things next turn. It's enter the battlefield and
a really cheap 6/6.
Yeah.
So Dress Down, how much is the cheating? It's like,
what do you mean? How much?
Like, what are you paying cost wise to play it with Dress Down?
Just the 3. 3 mana, cast it. Dress Down means that you don't have any abilities on your creatures, so you won't get the 3 damage, you won't get the 3 life, but you also won't have to sacrifice this.
Is it like an enchantment that stays on the board, you could choose to use it, or is it just
an enchantment that stays on the board that says all creatures lose all abilities?
Oh, so it's like I think the best way to think about it is like skill drain beatdown from Yu-Gi-Oh, like back in the day.
Yes, it's skill drain beatdown with the Flage, but the card sacrifices itself at the end step.
Okay.
So you would get to keep the Flage on the battlefield, and I don't know if you've mentioned this or not when you went over this, but this says enter battlefield or attacks.
I did not see or attacks. I just completely glossed over that.
Yeah. If you get to keep it on the battlefield, and then you get to attack with it and kill something else.
Yeah, I already thought the card was good.
It didn't even need the attack trigger on there, but yes, enter battlefield or attacks. The Consign to Memory thing that I was talking about, the countering the Flage sacrifice trigger, also happened, and that person was playing 4 Consign to Memory in their deck just to do that.
Consign to Memory was what again?
Counter the trigger to sacrifice itself.
Okay.
So they were playing cheat Flage in .deck.
Ah, I see.
So
make cheap 6/6 that deals damage and heals me.
Yes, every turn, unless your opponent deals with it.
Hmm.
So yes, good job. You redeemed yourself. You started 0-3, but you rallied back. You finished 2-3. So I got to give you props for turning the tables back, if you will.
I gotta go with my gut more. I was like too iffy on some of the old cards. I guess time went with my gut was wrong, but I feel like I just kind of like flip-flopped on some of them. It just turned me around on the other 2 cards.
You did think I was baiting you, but I was reverse baiting you.
Every time.
Yeah, you did think I was baiting you, but I was reverse baiting you. Okay, well, thank you very much once again for coming on the show, and maybe next time I'll give you a video that's not all colorless cards or all multicolored cards. You can absolutely do that. I love the challenge. All the most brain-racking cards are fine. These are pretty brain-racking, all right? These are pretty hard.
Yeah, they're very in-depth effects, and I like that.
Yeah. Well, you are a Digimon champion, so maybe we'll do a Digimon video in the future. But you get one video a month since you're a Patreon patron. So thank you once again for your support on the Patreon. And if you would like to be on the Patreon and you would like to be on the show, click the link down in the description below to join the Patreon. There's a specific tier that lets you be on the show. And also, you can go to prodigygames.com in the link in the description and use code TheOneJame at checkout to get 5% off of literally anything in the store. Once again, thank you very much, and I'll see you again next time. And as always, peace.